Mark Connor wrote the first lines of his book, It's About Time, the day his father died, Monday, September 30th, 2019. However, over the next year, as America went through the trauma of an economic shutdown and his beloved Twin Cities blew up in fiery riots, Mark worked when he could. The boxing gyms and churches were closed due to the governor's orders. He also helped his mother, who was diagnosed with the fatal heart disease, and daily mourned his father.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Mark Connor began boxing at age 10 at the Mexican American Boxing Club on the city's east side, the area of the city from which he formed his understanding of the world, anchoring his perception of direction to the family house and the rising of the sun outside his bedroom window. He had 102 amateur fights, made it to 3 national tournaments, and competed against some of the nation's top world-class boxers. Wow. He became the Upper Midwest Golden Gloves lightweight champion at the age of 17. Welcome, Mark Connor.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I am very happy to be here.
Well, we are happy to have you and hear your story, Mark. So take it away. Tell us your story. Start with your childhood and how you got into boxing at such a young age, etc.
Well, thank you, Carol. So I'm the youngest of two kids. My brother David is 13 days less than 1 year older than I am. So they I learned when I was a kid, people call that Irish twins because we were had
Oh,
uh, because we were so close together. Um, I think that's kind of a backhanded compliment to Irish and Catholics. But anyway, uh, we uh, we had a pretty, so we grew up in the Battle Creek neighborhood of the larger east side of St. Paul, which was for that side of town. It's a pretty quiet area and it's a pretty middle class area. But in that side of St. Paul was not as it's it's not a dangerous area, but it's and so I didn't grow up like you hear about boxers growing up, in really tough areas and having to fight their way through life and everything. But there were always fights, and I was a little bit smaller uh, uh, but I always fought back with people and stuff like that. So that was kind of partly in my nature. But I didn't think of being a boxer. I got into the sports that my brother got into. I really looked up to him, and so we played. We started skating. Our parents started us skating when we were about 3 years old, and we played hockey, and then we played starting with t-ball, then baseball, and all that kind of stuff. And when I was going into fifth grade, I had just started football, but boxing was becoming really popular at the time. So we're talking about the late 70s going into 1980, and what happened was. There's a lot of boxing on TV at the time, and I kind of had this desire to be an athlete and to be kind of, thought of as kind of a star and maybe be a professional athlete. And then I also thought of maybe being an actor, being a rock and roll. So the kind of things that kids think about and dream about. And I got into watching the bodybuilders on TV. There's when you see like the Mr. Olympia competition or something like that, and I always kind of wanted to lift weights and be muscular. And I was a small kid. More, I was really attracted to the aesthetic beauty of boxing and the way in the athletic appearance of the boxers. And so I kind of fell in love with that. And I fell in love with the whole drama and of being a champion, that kind of thing. I was really attracted to that. And the Rocky series was out, and my family went to a lot of movies. We hadn't seen the first movie, Rocky. We saw the movie Rocky 2, and when that was happening, I started thinking, hey, maybe I could be a boxer. Maybe I could be a boxer. And I told my mom I wanted to do that, and she was really upset and said there's no way you could do it. But I used to just constantly ask, and I say to my dad, come on, Dad, there's got to be some place, where there's a boxing gym. And he said, well, I know a guy I can talk to, and um, after the first football game I had with the playground football team, the organized football team, there were guys weren't showing up to practice, and the coach said next guy doesn't show up to practice is off the team. And I was a really an obedient kid and always was on time, early to stuff and everything. And uh, well, I had to go to practice on Friday night, but my dad said no. I was going to take you to this boxing thing, And I said, well, I got to go to practice first. He says, no, you either go to practice or you go to the boxing. You can't do both. I said, okay, fine. I said, so, boy, I'm going to be off the team. I said, fine. And we went to this Italian restaurant that they were having. We used to have this annual boxing card in September every year of amateur boxers, and it was held in the parking lot. And my dad ran into this guy, Luigi Dana, who was a car salesman. My dad knew, and his sons were boxers, and they were fighting that night. He says, "Hey, Louie, Louie." He says, "Oh yeah, this is Mark." Yeah, and shook my hand. Said, "You want to meet?" He wants to meet Emmett, doesn't he? And I didn't know who he was talking about, but he took me down into the lounge of the restaurant. It's called Mangini's. It's not there anymore, and that was serving as the locker room for the boxers. And he introduced me to this guy named Emmett Yanez. He's the founder of the Mexican American Boxing Club, and he says to me, do you want to box? I says, yes. Do you want to box real bad? I says, yeah. And he says, do you smoke? I'm just thinking, man, this guy must think I'm a juvenile delinquent. It kind of scared me. I said, no, no, no. He says, okay, if you don't smoke and you want to box real bad, you come to the gym at 5:30 on Monday and I'll teach you to box. Come here, let me introduce you to a couple of my boys. He introduced me to the two sons who were um, 20 and 18 or 19 and 17, Louis Jr. and Joey. And they were in their they had their robes on and their gloves on and their mouthpieces in. They shook my hands with their gloves. And I went to the gym on Monday and I just started boxing and that was it. And I mean the I went to this grade school, St. Pascal Baylon, on the east side, and it was so it's a Catholic school. And we took the bus to it, and I remember getting on the bus the next Monday, and Tommy Miller, that was the coach's son, he's sitting back with his boys in the back of the bus, and he says, "Hey Connor, you weren't at practice." I said, "Yeah, I know." He says, "Yeah, that means you're off the team." And I smiled and said, "I don't care, I quit." And he and the guys who were with him stood up and started clapping. And I just kind of laughed and everything. And that was it. That was the start of it. And I enjoyed it. I mean, I really loved it. It was my way of playing the way kids go and ride their bikes or hang out after school. I would go to the
Right,
boxing
right.
gym. Yeah. And I mean, I'd be hitting the bag, and my way of playing was basically I was imagining myself being the guys I saw on TV. And then my first fight was in January of 1980, and I won that fight, and then I just kept going after that. So you asked me to start with the beginning, so that's kind of the beginning. But if
Right.
you ask me about boxing, it's like putting a quarter in me. I don't shut up. So I'm going to a lot of details. I know we have a time limit. So where do you want me to go from there in terms of the flow of the conversation?
What happened? I mean, you had a few things that I shared in the beginning of the
Right.
show here, with all the trauma that you're going through. So what all was involved there?
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another: gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
There were a lot of highs and lows in my life. At the point when I was 14 years old, just finished my freshman year of high school. I was I had had about 20 fights in a row at that point, from 12 to 14, where I hadn't had a streak before. I win a few fights and lose one, then I win a few. But then I had gone about 2 years in a row without losing, about 20 or so fights, and I got to the quarterfinals of the National Junior Olympics, and got my nose broken there. I didn't get knocked off my feet, but I was stopped, and I fought a world-class fighter uh, who was a future uh, professional champion, and it really it really was a blow to me at that time.
Oh, I
And,
bet. I bet.
yeah, and then with the HMO that we had, we instead of staying there and having the doctor fix my nose at ringside, we thought, well, we got insurance, so, we're gonna go. We drove from Michigan back to St. Paul the next day, and they made me wait 3.5 weeks to actually have it fixed. And it was an excellent surgeon, but he didn't get it entirely straight. So the next year, I was, you know, I wanted to get a girlfriend, but I was afraid to smile in front of girls because I knew it would make my nose look more crooked. I was just really kind of shy and so forth. Um, but so I went on. It took me 3 years till I got back to the national level. That was my senior year of high school when uh, I won the Upper Midwest Golden Gloves lightweight title. I went to Tennessee for the National Golden Gloves. And there was another low when I lost there. I thought I really beat this guy up, but they gave the other guy the decision. And I kind of had this apprehension. My family, both my parents are college graduates, and my mother was the first one in her family of any side ever to go to college. And I was, I kind of felt this pressure. I went to a pretty elite Catholic high school, St. Thomas Academy, and um, I was thinking, it's not something I ever communicated or articulated to my parents, and we didn't talk about this, and I probably should have openly talked to them about it because my dad was a really understanding guy and probably would have been supportive of me, but I didn't. I couldn't. I didn't. Not having won a national title, I didn't feel like I was justified looking my dad in the eye and saying, "I'm not going to go to college next year. I'm going to stay and train and try really hard to make the Olympics for '88 or something like that, or turn professional." So I ended up going to college, and I had this real pull between academics and boxing because there were about 2 years that I didn't box in college, and then I decided to, even though I was going to college, I still kept boxing. I could never quite give everything to it that I could uh, while I was concentrating on the academics. And I was always one fight away from making it back to the national level. So I boxed 2 more years after college, and I wanted to at least come as close as I could to win a national title unless I turned professional. And the last trainer I had, Dennis Presley, he developed my teammate Will Grigsby to the IBF Junior Flyweight Championship of the world. After I stopped boxing competitively, I stayed training with him and sparring with him and stuff like that. I talk a little bit about that in the book. And uh, so I was around trainers that really taught me. And this last trainer, he really gave me the confidence to be a trainer myself. But I always regretted not having that professional career because the three guys that I went to the National Golden Gloves with, they fought 11 world champions between them. Um, and two of them, one of them won a minor world title, and the one I just mentioned won a major world title. And so I always wondered, what could have been, what could have been. And Uh, so I kind of went on this adventure after I had left boxing in 1994. I drove across the country and stayed with a friend of a friend in suburban Seattle, and for 3.5 weeks in May of '94, I walked the boats at Elliott Bay and around Seattle, going boat to boat. I'd been advised on how to do this by someone who knew about it, looking for a salmon fishing boat job. And I actually got on a boat that took me up to Southeast Alaska for the summer. And there's actually a story in the book where uh, that I it's kind of a one of the climaxes in the story, or where I uh, ended up losing all of the writing I had from that period out of a backpack that disappeared, and it was actually when I was helping Will Grigsby prepare for a fight on TV. I was sparring with him, and that I ended up losing all this stuff, and it had the first draft of a novel I was writing in notebook. I didn't own a computer yet. That was in 1995. That's another kind of low point in my life, and I ended up getting a really good poem out of it. Maybe I can share that later. Uh, but so those were some uh, kind of exciting times in my life. But there was all that time, even when I was in Alaska. I mean, it kind of like I was letting go of this whole boxing dream at the time and being a champion. And so I thought, well, I have to do something adventurous. I consider myself a writer. I've got to be like Jack Kerouac or something and go out on the road. And so that's why I went up to Alaska and worked on the fishing boat and everything. And so I was always kind of I was looking for kind of a mystical experience and kind of kind of a, an adventurous experience. There's a uh, Irish American poet that I had met in the early 90s. He was in his 40s, I was in my 20s, named Kevin O'Rourke, who's an award-winning poet. He's a Mississippi River barge hand poet, is how I describe him, because he worked on the Mississippi River barges for over 20 years. And at that point, he was the security man, just sitting overnight, writing his poetry and watching the barges and the tugboats on the dock. And he had gotten his sobriety and met some Lakota American Indian people who took him down to the Sundance ceremony in Rosebud Reservation, and I was interested in that, and so I went with him in 1995 instead of going back into the commercial fishing uh, work that summer. And then the following year, I got a job at this place called Anda Young. It's spelled AIN. It's the first word. The second word is DAH, and the last word is YUNG. It's Ojibwe for our home, and it's in the middle of St. Paul. It's a temporary emergency uh, homeless shelter for kids aged 5 to 17. And it's American Indian run. They take all kinds of kids, but it's primarily Native Americans who are their clientele. I worked with them for 13 and a half years, and I was involved with that American Indian spiritual approach to life. Darwin Strong was the wife of I'm sorry, Darwin Strong was the husband of Gabby Strong, was the executive director at the time. They used to go to the Sundance down in a town called Kyle in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Actually, they still go to it. And they took me there the years 1999 through 2003. And he's a helper in that ceremony. I learned a lot about that tradition. What made me comfortable being in that tradition was I'm a lifelong Catholic, and I found a similarity in the there's a similarity in there, although I know it's something very different. And I just kind of had a solidarity with that community for a long time. And uh, my father always was a guide to me, and he always was supportive of me, and he never tried to mess around and kind of pressure me, go do this, go do that. But he always was a little concerned with me about not really doing something that as commensurate, economically speaking, with my college education. I have I got a BA in English from the University of Minnesota, But at the time, so I started this in 2003. I filed a LLC called Fighting Chance Boxing for Life, and it's just a sole proprietorship where I uh,
Mm.
teach people boxing for physical fitness and self-defense, and I also work with competitive boxers. Um, and then I always had some other jobs on the side that would kind of supplement me. And I always had this writer friend who's been a freelance writer out in New York since 1995, named Nick Bryant. And people who have there are people who might have heard of him. He was recently appeared on the Sean Ryan podcast, which is got millions of followers. When he was being interviewed about the P. Diddy situation, because Nick wrote this book called The Franklin Scandal, in which I'm the first guy he uh, lists in the acknowledgments, because I gave him a lot of support when he was doing the
Oh,
research for it.
really?
But yeah, but it's a book that uncovered a bunch of child trafficking and stuff, and
Really?
it
Wow.
involved intelligence and all. It's really some cloak and dagger kind of stuff. And but I always would go visit him out in New York from 1995 on, and then I was got into the National Writers Union. I was on the National Executive Committee for a while uh, as a trustee, and I'd go out there twice a year to do audits. And I'd always visit Gleason's boxing gym, and I was always planning on getting a chunk of money set aside as a cushion and go out there and be a trainer. I know guys. One guy I mentioned in the book named Ricky Ray Taylor, who he was at the time I wrote the book. He'd been out there for about 17 years, and there are guys that make six figures just training the white collar professionals who want to be in shape
Mm.
and have
Right.
some physical fitness. Um, and every time I was coming up to do that, some kind of roadblock came in the way. And I was getting ready to do that I'd gone out there in 2018 and I'd solidified some contacts. I talked to all these different gyms. I had this small car accident that set me aside a little bit as I was kind of rebuilding. And um, the gym that I private contract at made some changes and expanded. And the office, I had an office in there and everything. And all the rent went way up and all the stuff kind of, I had to move all the stuff out into my tiny apartment, and everything was cramped up. So I took uh, a temporary job doing some census work. This is in 2019, trying to build up some more money, and I was going to get ready to go out there. And my dad and mom went to uh, they went to a 4-day vacation in San Francisco and staying at the Marines Memorial Club. My dad had gotten membership there because he's a combat wounded Vietnam veteran. He was a first lieutenant platoon leader in Vietnam. And uh, I was going to pick them. I had just come back from being up north doing it was the pre-census stuff where you're kind of verifying the types of properties, so they'd have it all ready for the census in 2020. And I had just gotten back from there on Friday, the I believe it was the 20th of uh, September. And I was going to pick up my parents at the airport at like 9 o'clock that night, and then 3 o'clock, which is this is on the first page of the book. 3 o'clock, walking into a Jimmy John sandwich shop on Grand Avenue in St. Paul. My phone goes off. It's vibrating in my pocket. I pull it out, and it's my mom. And she says, "I'm in the hospital with your father," and he had had a heart attack. And just that was
Oh,
just another thing like that came up. That, like, man, I was just gonna get ready to go out there and all that kind of stuff, figure it out for the next, sometime next couple of months, and so that's where I started to really hit bottom there. And then that's where the book opens up, and that's where the story really starts. And I talk about various experiences in my life, and then various conversations I had with my dad, and how that affects my faith. And I could read you a couple excerpts if you want, or I
well,
can.
tell me what you write about. Tell me about your book first, and then you can read a couple.
Okay, well, it's described as a saga wrapped around a package of poems guarded by angels. And so the theme of guardian angels is actually running through it throughout. And like I mentioned, being a lifelong Catholic, and then my exploration of Native American Indian religious approach, and how I kind of reconciled that with myself, and found my way to be respectful of that and still maintain my Christian faith. And actually, I said I worked there for 13 and a half years. A lot of that time was part-time, and even where I was just on call. And I'd gone back to a permanent part-time position there, working overnights, Friday, Saturday, and Sundays awake. And I was at that time between 2003 and 2007 that I really re-embraced my Catholic faith. And I wasn't announcing it to the people that I worked with, but the one thing I really respect about the local urban Native American Indian community is that the people that I was surrounded by in that Anda young community, um, they they're not people that would necessarily hold Christian beliefs. Some of them are Christian, some of them are traditional, and some of them maybe have uh, have kind of a cross kind of a belief with the two of them, but no one discouraged me from re-embracing my Catholic faith, and none of them pressured me to follow the what you call the life of walking the red road. They just uh, accepted me as who I was, and expected me just to be respectful of everyone that I encountered. So that was something that was really cool about being a part of that community. And it's also part of what I talk about at the end of the book. When the riots were happening and I was mourning my dad's death, I was called out by Darwin Strong when I go and help uh, the people who were protecting the native buildings in South Minneapolis, because my dad grew up across the street from St. Columba Catholic Parish in St. Paul. And that's 5 blocks off of University Avenue, and where the riots were in St. Paul, that's where all the fires were on University Avenue, and where the police station was burnt down in South Minneapolis. My mom grew up. Well, her family originated out of the in Minneapolis, out of the Holy Rosary Parish, which is across the street from this housing project called Little Earth, which is tribal land. In AIM, the American Indian Movement had an armed barricade right there at that corner, and so they weren't just protecting the Little Earth housing project; they were protecting Holy Rosary also. And so all this stuff that happened that was really major and seen by the world. My parents grew up right just blocks away from these places, and I'm from this city in this metropolitan area my whole life. So, uh, when at this point, I knew I was going to write this book, but it wasn't until it started on February 9th and finished on March 29th of 2021. So it was a year later, so a year and a half after Dad died, that I actually wrote it. And you know, in terms of the lows in my life, I mean, after Dad had died, my mom and I had taken him back from we stayed in because I had flown down to San Francisco. We prayed over him as he died, um, um, and and when he died, it took us till it was a Monday, so, the 30th of September. It took us till Friday, the 4th of October, to get the arrangements for his body to be flown back, and so we flew back that night. Um, and then my dad's funeral was mid-October. A month later, I'm watching a guy shadowbox in this makeshift ring in the gym that's about a foot off the ground, and I'm walking down the ring apron, and my foot hits a part of the ring apron that's uneven, and I slip off, and I ended up tearing a couple of ligaments in my right ankle. So
Oh
the
my
end,
goodness.
yeah, the end of 29 was just a time of recovery for me, and then I'm starting to recover, and my foot's getting my ankle's getting better, and uh the early 2020 in March, and I'd go out and I'd go do a 3 mile run, and then we get the St. Patrick's Day, it gets canceled because then everything's shut down. The governor's orders, the gyms are shut down, and I one of the side gigs I did, I used to be a taxi driver, and then I was doing some rideshare driving, and my mother, she'd been diagnosed with heart disease in 2014, and she had starting to have a lot of breathing problems and getting tired just walking, you know, walking, across the room and losing her breath. And so they finally determined that she had arterial pulmonary hypertension, which is a rare and fatal, rare and fatal heart disease. And man, so I didn't do any of the rideshare driving from March of 2020 to December 2020 because I was afraid someone's going to have the COVID coronavirus, give it to me, and I give it to my mom because she was so vulnerable. And it was just, I know you remember it too, man. That was just a crazy time uh, when everyone was so scared of infecting each other or getting sick or something. And I don't know how much of that we had to do or didn't have to do, but at the time, you don't know how to deal with it, especially when you got someone really vulnerable
Right.
uh,
Right.
present there taking care of. And so yeah, so that all happened, but
Well,
um,
we're running short on time, so why don't you tell it, maybe read an excerpt from your book, and
okay.
also give us an idea of who would appreciate the book and like who should buy it.
So I've got this poem I wrote on Saturday, April 21st, 2018, and it's called Doing It Badly. And I'm going to read this poem to you, and then I'm going to give you the short paragraph after it, which closes off chapter 2. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly, G.K. Chesterton would say. His most redeeming quality as an Englishman was his support for Irish freedom. His second most redeeming quality was his wisdom. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. So it was with you, even though what I decided to do drove you away. I have seemed a beast with a horn, just a losing warrior, all battle torn, stumbling clumsily through emotional folly, not willing to admit the moment had passed and it was time to go home. You were another purpose for me, a budding young lady of beauty and need, rejecting my heart and the love I did bleed, clutching your pain as if it were greed, me standing still, alone. Maybe I was supposed to just walk away, get to bed early, greet the new day, but something in your touch, something in your sigh, something in your smile behind your dark eyes said you were worth it. Yes, it is true, both for me and for you. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Doing it badly is a great concept from G.K. Chesterton. It is so true. Anything worth doing is definitely worth doing badly. Think of how much God loves you. Okay, I understand we think so little of ourselves sometimes that we can't imagine people really loving us to the point of giving us everything, especially those whose relationships with their parents are really fractured. My heart grieves for those who don't have loving, sacrificing parents like I do. I understand then if you struggle believing the creator of the universe loves you with that sacrificial love. He does, though, which is why it's so worthwhile loving him. God gave you the individual that you are, the sun you see in the morning and the moon at night. Whatever your troubles, be they a yearning for alcohol, a sexual selfishness, or anger and frustration, it's worthwhile to engage that battle for the love of God. You are so imperfect, like everyone else, that you will inevitably fail at loving God. But a perfect father accepts a child's love at the child's capacity, not his own. So go ahead, love God badly. It's the only way you can.
Wow, that was extremely impactful and moving. I thank you so much for sharing that. And what again is the name of your book and where can
So
it be purchased?
So the full title with subtitle is "It's About Time Millions of Copies Sold for Dad." And it's the best place to get it is at my website, boxersandwritersmagazine.com. That's all spelled out, boxersandwritersmagazine.com. And that will the books page on that website connects you to Amazon and another outlet called Lulu. You can get it at
Okay.
both of them.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and the people who should buy this book. I mean, we got Father's Day coming up this Sunday, and I'll tell you, this is the perfect book for fathers, sons, and those who want to understand them.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. So
Well,
that's what I think.
go ahead.
I said that's what I think. I mean, that covers a lot of people, I think.
And Mark, I thank you for sharing your story. I felt your passion, of course, and I appreciate you the way you outlined it. That was I know that there'll be many people that will relate to it. And then ending it with the dramatic closing of your work is it's absolutely beautiful. And we will definitely be promoting this in all channels. And again, I thank you so much, Mark, for being on Never, Ever, Ever Give Up Hope.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.